first one I wrote during National Poetry Writing Month, about halfway through the month. And I had halfway lost my mind writing a poem a day. So, and I wrote it as a parody of the workshop by Billy Collins. It's called The Bookshop Kona Stories. I just bought a copy of Billy Collins' Trouble with Poetry, and there was just something about it, the way the nearly vellum reached inside of me, stirring me like a big wooden spoon. I licked it because it was chocolate pages, But back to the book, it was rectangle, obviously, with maroon lettering and a really cute bear on the cover. I was just so interested that I couldn't resist buying it. I was so excited all the way home to read it. I sniffed the cover, and it was kind of dusty like the bookshop where I bought it. The woman at the counter was so excited to sell it to me. She invited me to go to the writers group that met there on Thursday afternoons at 1. I didn't think I could go, but I thanked her, and she remarked as I left that I should attend the Poetry Slam at the Volcano Art Center this Friday. It sounded like so much fun, and I immediately thought, I must tell Kona. He'll be so excited, and I'll be able to meet him and hear him reread his poetry. And then I thought, that would be great. And then I remembered that was just too crazy, even for me. So I just mailed him about it and forwarded him the brochure. And then I remembered about the book. I opened it, and something inside reached out and grabbed me by the throat and dragged me inside. But it was quite bright in there, very accessible, as they say these days, don't they? And I was there, and I was just so, I was there in any way, and so I read, and I was just so happy to read his poetry. Wouldn't you be? Yay!
That did sound
This next one, I wrote a couple weeks ago about, I just bought this book, Billy Collins Ballistics, and it's called Walk with Billy Collins Ballistics. I went for a walk with Billy Collins today. I tucked him in my leather bag and set off down the street. He peeked his head out to see where we were going, and I gently pushed him back down and whispered, "Careful, dear, someone will see." I crossed the street and felt the warmth of Kailua on my skin. I could hear the ocean faintly over the hum of traffic, dogs barking and a whir of skateboarders. I walked across the street on a weedy drive and stepped up on the red bricks of society. I sipped my drink and whispered, "We're almost there." I stepped down into the grass and kicked off my slippers. Billy offered to carry them, but I kind of liked them dangling from my fingertips. I sat on a stone wall and looked out at the ocean. An ocean liner rested, and millionaires looked back and imagined my life. I took out Billy, and he became a giant looking over my shoulder as I read. He didn't want to seem too conspicuous or make me nervous, though he was eager to hear my impression of each poem. I turned pages, and he pointed to each one and told me the story of how they were written. Wonderful digressions into trips to Europe and the lamentation over the state of poetry today. I sighed and kept reading and turning pages. Finally, I set him down and just breathed. I had so lacked breath lately. I tucked Billy back into my purse and got up, walked up the hill towards my room. I kicked off my slippers, turned the key, and prepared for anti-life. I set Billy on the table and moved about my space. I sat at a wood table and looked at the ocean and breathed. I put on a red dress and twirled in front of the mirror. Billy looked up and smiled. That night I set him on my bedside table just in case I needed a bullet at close range in the middle of the night. And that is a whole lot to ask for $24, so I thought so. It's really sentimental, and I wanted to have the heartfelt sentiment with it and still have the respect and maintain standards that wanted it to be a really fine poem. It's called Mary's Marbles. She died New Year's Eve at 90 years old, 50 years sober. She spent her life giving out marbles. She would say, "Put it in your pocket, drink it and it disappears. Drink and it disappears. Give it away to wipe tears." Mary spent her life dumping marbles into the sky. They float like translucent bubbles, bubbling up with a smile. I have this theory. When we stand in a circle and pray, our marbles float up like wishes, bubbles juggling, sparring, spinning. These are the marbles of sobriety. I have drawers full. If I drink, I dump them into nothingness. I reach in my pocket and retrieve one of Mary's marbles. I hold it to the sun and it twinkles like Mary's eyes. If I drink, I wish it away. When my marbles pop, you give me one. It multiplies like cells dividing, floating around the sky. Mary's marbles float around the world like wishes. She spent her life giving out marbles. I reach deep in my pocket and pull one out for strength. It is comforting in my hand. I hold it to the sun and it glistens like the twinkle in Mary's eyes, carried in our hearts. If I drink, I dump my marbles into nothingness, and they pop like translucent bubbles, floating up from the holding hand framed circle, like the memory of Mary, glistening like bubbles floating in the sunshine, in the world where Mary lives. Drinking, you lose your last marble, and now Mary is gone.
Very good.
So I hung out in Bubble World with Mary all night.
Join us for Purely Poetry the first Friday of every month, only at Candyland Studio. Call 333-2044 for more info. No pressure, just poetry. See you there. Sincerely, Sharon. P.S. If you can't read this, that's okay. Just remember to check out www.candylandstudio.com and stay tuned in.